I grew up in the quiet town of Evergrove, where the rain came softly and the trees whispered like old friends. Our house sat near the edge of a forest trail, and my childhood was a gentle blur of firefly summers, bedtime stories, and the constant, comforting hum of my mother's voice. My mother was the kind of woman whose presence filled a room without effort, soft-spoken but warm, endlessly patient, and always humming some tune under her breath. My father, a quiet man with tired eyes and rough hands, worked long hours but came home every night with stories and tired smiles. For the longest time, life felt steady, predictable, safe. But everything changed when I was 16. It started with a persistent cough, then fatigue. My mother, once so full of gentle energy, became a shadow in her own body. We thought it was a cold. Then we thought it was the flu. But within weeks, she was gone. Just gone. Her absence wasn't loud. It was empty. Like someone had stolen the soul of our home and left behind a shell. My father stopped telling stories, stopped smiling. We still ate at the same table, followed the same routines, but the air felt colder, heavy. By the time I turned 18, my father remarried. Her name was Lillian, kind, elegant, and always trying just a little too hard. I didn't hate her. In fact, I understood him. He needed something to anchor him, and she tried. God, she tried. She brought with her a son, Julian. He was 17, just a year younger than me, with quiet blue eyes and a face that rarely showed emotion. We weren't kids anymore, and no one forced us to bond. We just coexisted. At first, I avoided him. He was polite, distant, and always tucked away in his room with headphones or a book. We exchanged nods at dinner. Occasionally a word or two, but mostly silence. I didn't mind. I was still grieving in my own way, but slowly the silence shifted. It began with small gestures. He'd pour me a cup of tea before disappearing again, pass the salt with a shy smile, offer to help Lillian with the dishes, and ask me to join. Our eyes started to meet across the table, longer each time. One night, I couldn't sleep. My room felt too quiet, too hollow. I sat by my window, wrapped in a blanket, and watched the trees sway in the moonlight. A gentle knock came at the door. "Hey," Julian whispered. "You awake?" I nodded. He sat on the floor across from me, hugging his knees. Sometimes I feel like we're the only real people in this house. I didn't know what to say, but I understood him more in that moment than I had in months. We talked for hours. About everything. About nothing. About how grief doesn't shout, it lingers. How the silence in our house wasn't just absence. It was memory echoing off the walls. That became our ritual. Every few nights, a soft knock. Two silhouettes talking in the dark. No labels. No expectations. Just honesty, vulnerability. I don't know when it changed. I don't know the moment the comfort turned into something heavier, more charged. Maybe it was the night I brushed his hand reaching for a cup and didn't pull away. Or the night we both fell asleep on the floor, waking up inches apart, faces closer than they should have been, but it shifted, and we both felt it. Summer came with its long, golden evenings and restless nights. Lillian and my father announced a short trip, 5 days away to visit relatives. I pretended not to care. Julian and I were left alone in the house. "I'll stay out of your way," he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Same here," I replied, but the moment already felt loaded. That first night, we ended up on the living room couch. Neither of us planned it. I came down to get water, found him flipping through channels, and somehow never made it back to bed. We watched a movie we didn't care about. Something romantic, overacted, predictable, yet neither of us left. There was a scene, a kiss, and the rain, the kind that drips with slow burn longing. On screen, Two people crossed a line. In real life, I could feel Julian's eyes flicker toward me. My heart fetted like it was trying to make a decision before I could. I didn't look at him. Not yet, but the air between us felt heavy. When the credits rolled, we sat in silence. I shifted slightly, our knees brushed. He didn't move away. I don't know what this is, he said quietly, eyes still on the dark screen. Me neither, I whispered. Then finally, I looked at him, and something broke open. He leaned in, slow, hesitant, waiting for me to pull away. I didn't. The kiss wasn't rushed. It was the kind you only share when you've thought about it too long, denied it too hard. It was tender, trembling, and terrifying. He pulled back, eyes searching mine. Should we stop? I should have said yes, but I-D-I-D-N single quotes T. Instead, I pressed my forehead to his and whispered, not tonight. The next few days passed like a dream you don't want to wake up from. We cooked together, laughed more than we had in months, and stayed up talking until dawn. And when words ran out, we let silence speak for us. We didn't label it, didn't ask what it meant. It just was one morning. I woke up wrapped in the warmth of him, our limbs tangled like we were afraid to let go. And maybe we were, because deep down, we knew it couldn't last. When our parents returned, we went back to our roles, step-siblings, acquaintances, polite strangers sharing dinner, but inside, everything had changed. We didn't talk about that week. We didn't talk about the nights filled with whispered touches and slow kisses in dark rooms. But we felt it in the way our fingers lingered a moment too long passing plates. In the way we sometimes avoided each other, not out of discomfort, but fear that one glance would unravel it all again. Months passed. Julian graduated and was accepted into a university out of state. He hugged me the day he left, a perfectly normal gesture between step-siblings. But when he pulled away, his eyes said everything. Maybe, he whispered, in another life. I smiled with my lips. Not with my eyes. I moved on. Or at least, I learned to function. I took a job as a receptionist at a small architecture firm. I made friends. I got used to the quiet again, though this time it was different. It wasn't grief anymore. It was memory. Gentle, haunting memory. That's when I met Elijah. He owned a bookstore down the street. Older than me, with kind eyes and a patient smile. He didn't rush me. He didn't ask too many questions. He simply let me exist beside him, slowly stitching myself back together. With him, love was calm. Safe. We married within a year. And I learned to breathe differently. We built a life. A daughter. A home filled with warmth that didn't ache. But sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, when I lie beside Elijah listening to our child's gentle breathing down the hall, a memory drifts in like a breeze under a locked door, not painfully. Not vividly. Just a shadow of a week that once felt like everything. I never told Elijah. I don't think I ever could. What purpose would it serve, except to hurt a man who's only ever given me kindness? But still. Sometimes I wonder if Julian remembers too, and whether that summer lives in the corners of his heart, the way it lingers in mine. Years passed. Elijah and I grew into each other the way vines do, slowly, deliberately, with time. He was my peace, my certainty. Our daughter, Mia, became the heart of our home. Her laughter was the new music in the halls where silence used to reign. But late at night, when the house stilled and shadows stretched across the walls, my thoughts sometimes wandered to the one place they shouldn't. To Julian. Not in longing. Not in regret. In something softer. Like a scar that no longer hurts, but still itches when it rains. I'd see something small. A blue mug like the one he used, a song from that forgotten summer, and for a second it would all come rushing back. Not just the kisses or the heat of our bodies on quiet nights, but the feeling of being truly seen in the middle of grief, of being held in a space where I didn't have to explain my sadness. Julian and I weren't just two teenagers acting on impulse. We were two fractured hearts that found brief refuge in one another. We were never meant to last, but we were meant to matter. That's the part I can never say aloud. There was a moment last year. Elijah and I were folding laundry in the sunroom. Mia was drying with chalk outside. A song came on soft piano, a melody I hadn't heard in years. Julian used to hum it, back when he thought I couldn't hear. My hand stilled. Ow, Elijah said gently, noticing. You okay? I nodded too quickly. Yeah, just got lost for a second. He smiled and kissed the side of my head. Happens to the best of us. And I knew in that moment that I had chosen right, that the life I'd built, the one in front of me, was where I was meant to be. But still, I felt like I was carrying something I couldn't name. Something weightless, yet heavy. I thought about telling him, Elijah, about Julian, about the week that rewrote my world when I was too young to understand the language of consequence. But I haven't, not because I wanted to lie, but because I don't want to erase what we have now with something that lives only in memory. Still, the guilt lingers like a fog that never fully lifts. Not for what happened, but for the silence I've wrapped it in. So here, I am at this strange crossroads of peace and ache. I look at my life, my husband, my child, and I feel full. But part of me wonders, does Julian ever think of me too? Does he remember the way I do? Do the shadows ever whisper my name in his quiet moments? Maybe I'll never know. Maybe some stories are never meant to be shared, only carried, softly, secretly, with care. If you were me, would you speak the truth? Or let it stay buried beneath a life that's finally whole? Would you risk the calm for the sake of clarity? Would you confess a summer that never fully ended in your mind? I don't need judgment, just an answer, because I'm still listening, still wondering, still hoping that somewhere out there, someone understands what it means to be haunted by something beautiful and forbidden.